I'd like to welcome you to our Labor Temple tonight for a discussion between the candidates currently running to become our next St. Lawrence County Sheriff. Thank you to the candidates under Sheriff O'Brien and Detective Engel for attending tonight's event. Before we begin, I'd like to note no endorsements have been given to either candidate by any of the three unions hosting tonight's event. Any endorsements would generally be bestowed collectively through the Central Trades Council, AFL-CIO. Acting as the mediator for tonight's event, I ask that everyone be respectful to any questions be related to the duties of the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office, and that there be no interruptions while the candidates are answering questions. We'll prepare a list of questions for the candidates. After those questions have been floored, time permitting, the floor will be open for questions from the audience. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment for each candidate to introduce themselves and explain why they should be our next St. Lawrence County Sheriff. Sean, Under Sheriff, Mr. O'Brien, we'll start with you.
Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I appreciate all three unions taking the opportunity to listen to two great individuals run to become your next St. Lawrence County Sheriff. I appreciate the opportunity. So, a little bit about me. I live just outside of Ogdensburg. I live with my wife and three beautiful children, Claire, Colton, Cruz, my wife Jill. We own a small business in Ogdensburg, or two small businesses in Ogdensburg, that we started from the ground up back in 2005, and we built it up to a couple of businesses. I graduated from Ogdensburg Free Academy. I went on to SUNY Canton. I went to the David Sullivan Law Enforcement Academy just over 20 years ago. I was hired by Sheriff Gary Jarvis in 2004. I worked on the road as a deputy sheriff. And in 2012, I was assigned to a task force here in Messina, the HSI task force, handling a lot of major crimes and the child exploitation cases and cross-border smuggling and drug trafficking throughout our county. In 2017, I came back to Canton and I was assigned a detective and handled a lot of major crimes, including the homicides, robberies, sex offenses, and any major crime that the Sheriff's Office handled from 2017 to 2020. January 1st of 2020, I became the Undersheriff here in St. Lawrence County for Sheriff Bigwharf. As we all know in this room, we've all lived through a lot of change over the last 3 years. COVID has changed everything, right, wrong, or indifferent, and police and our policing and law enforcement has experienced the same change, if not more change. There's been the defund the police movement, there's been police reform, there's been HALT, there's been the MAP program, there's the bail reform, and there's the biggest frustration is our Second Amendment has been under attack. And I gotta be honest with you, when I became undersheriff in January of 2020, I gave the sergeant who was assigned the pistol permits, I said, there's one thing that I asked for the pistol permits. I said, legal, law-abiding citizens need to have the opportunity to write and carry, bear arms. And I said, we need to get these pistol permits done as soon as we possibly can. I'm proud to say that as of today, and it's a team effort. The members of the Sheriff's Office should be very proud because over the last 3 years, they've been able to get the pistol permits completed, the investigations, the things that we only could control in less than 30 days. It's a 28.3 day cumulative average. So those members of that office, those union members of that office need to be commended for that. Moving forward, what I would like to bring, I'd like to bring an emergency response team to this county. Obviously, many of you live here in the Messina area. We experienced a swatting incident again this week, and we experienced another couple swatting incidents at schools recently. We need an emergency response team. I have full confidence in the line officers of the village police departments and the city police departments. What we need to do is we need to train them, we need to give them the right tools, because everyone in this room, including their family members, our children, the vulnerable people, our parents, they need to feel safe. And the only way they can feel safe is if we properly train and fund an emergency response team. That needs to get done. I have a track record of getting things done. I'm a small business owner. I know the unique value of a dollar and the hard work what goes into that. And I'm here for the taxpayers and the citizens of this county, period. Thank you.
Detective Engel.
I'll make it quick, a little bit about who I am. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania. I graduated high school and enlisted in the military. I did a 4-year enlistment in the United States Marine Corps. During that time period, I got married and started my family. at the end of my enlistment, I moved to Pennsylvania. I worked construction for a year, roofing, framing, building Burger Kings and condos. Wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. I was kind of drawn to the North Country, that's where my wife is from, and we moved up here. I worked as a mechanic in a garage for a little while, and I got a job down here at Messina Hospital in the maintenance department. I was there for about 5 years. In 2001, I got hired at the sheriff's office. I've been there ever since. I've had the opportunity while at the sheriff's office to, I was sent to quite a bit of training, tactical training, interviews and interrogations, things like that. I got a list here. I'm not gonna bore you with it. Why am I qualified for the job? Because of that training. If you go to the web page, the Facebook page, it'll lay it out there for you. There's a phone number there too. If you have any questions, you wanna talk about something, give me a call. I'm not afraid to meet you anywhere, anytime. I can't disagree with a lot of what Sean said, the problems we have here in the North Country, and they do need to be addressed. We got a drug problem here, opioids has been here for a while. How do we combat that? You know, you can mull a lot of ideas around, until they, stiffen the laws up on these drug charges. There's not a lot of bite there. They decriminalize just about everything. So, I mean, there's probably people that could be leaned on to make the table something to make that a little harsher, make the punishments there a little harsher. The emergency response team, I just feel you'd spend a lot of money reinventing the wheel. I'm geared more towards the active shooter response, train every officer in the county equally. That way, if in an event of a recall, they can respond from their house.
We're gonna, as we go through the questions, I think a lot of it, we're gonna get to all of that.
Sure.
If you wanna.
Fire investigations, you know, that's another thing I'd like to look into, maybe getting some deputies trained in fire investigation. We deal with a lot of arsons in this county. But I'll just leave it at that, and if you just wanna start with the debate, that's fine too.
All right. Under Sheriff O'Brien, we'll start with you and we'll just go, okay? Ross, I ask that your answers be in all reasonable length of time,
Absolutely.
okay? We respect each other. Would you support or bolster the current school SRO, School Resource Officer Program? Where should funding come from, if so?
So, there's a couple things. One, we started an SRO program approximately 2 years ago. It started in one school, it expanded to 3. The program has been extremely successful. Currently, the schools are funding those programs in the 3 school districts here in this county. I personally facilitated those contracts and met with those school boards and got those off the ground with the schools. I would love to see every school have it here in St. Lawrence County. Sometimes that's not fiscally reasonable, not responsible, fiscally reasonable based on the funds of which those schools are. We need to remain fair and consistent with all school districts. Because it's no fair to say that one school district, if the county were to pick up the tab for one school district and not give it to another. I think everybody in the room would agree with that. So having said that, if the school districts want the SRD program, the School Resource Deputy program, we're happy to fund them, or happy to supply them the personnel for that. I will say, breaking news, as of yesterday, I received another call from another school district for a 4th one. So the program is working. We're proud of that program that we started. It's fair and consistent. If there is an adjustment that needs to be made, I'd love to see a law enforcement officer in every school, but there's a lot of hurdles that need to be taken care of. You know, we could have retired corrections officers or retired military be put in the schools. The problem is you have training, you have DCGS requirements, you have workers' comp. There's a lot of issues that go on behind this. Other states in this nation are able to do that, and everybody says, why can't we do that? Well, we live in New York. Unfortunately, some of those things aren't possible. But we're proud to continue to expand that program. I would be happy to have further discussions about that.
Dr. Vangel, would you like me to repeat the question?
No. Big advocate on the SRO program, and I don't think you're gonna find a law enforcement person in this state or country that's against it. You gotta understand the times we're in now. This active shooter stuff, it's not going away. It's here to stay. I just like to find a more affordable way to make it happen in every school. Not every school has the same funding as, you know, some of the smaller schools compared to some of the bigger schools. And I think we can both agree that every school it's gonna have to be tailored for every school. Some schools have more students than others, some schools have multiple buildings. You take Messina and Ogdensburg, your two bigger populated areas in the county, and they have high schools and elementary schools. So, my plan for that is, it's not one person's responsibility to come up with an idea for that problem. I think that you're gonna have to have county legislators, school superintendents, and law enforcement sit down and have an open discussion about that and explore some options, an affordable way to make that happen. And I don't think that's something that we can push out and wait. I mean, I think this active shooter stuff, if we knew where the next one was gonna be, we could prepare for it and prevent it, but we don't. So it's just a response.
Yep.
So I think that it needs to be a team effort to sit down and find out what every school can afford, and this needs to happen in the near future.
Sean, back to you. What is your vision for combating the opiate crisis facing St. Lawrence County?
This is an overarching issue that probably everyone in this room has heard since, their adult life. We've got a drug problem. We understand that. I've seen it firsthand, both professionally and personally. I've seen what drugs do to a family. I see that somebody lost their life to a fentanyl overdose, and what kind of harm and pain that causes on a family. With that being said, I certainly want to continue to expand our drug task force. I can say that I'm very proud of our drug task force. I mean, some of the detectives' names that work on the drug task force, their names are ringing in Washington, D.C. and Buffalo, New York, because we have a very proactive drug task force. With that being said, as undersheriff, I wrote a grant, a COPS grant, for an additional drug task force detective. That person was hired just last year. That's an additional position. We've hired 6 people, one of which is a drug task force position. The second one that has a nexus to drugs is a human trafficking position, an over $1 million grant that I facilitated and personally wrote. It's an ongoing problem. We need to continue to fight that. Our municipal agencies are great partners. We need to continue to work with them. They all have their own, the beauty of having the small police departments is, they're the best ones that know what's going on in their neighborhoods. And we need to continue to communicate and make sure that we're doing the best we can for the citizens of this county.
Thank you. Dr. Engel, combating the opiate crisis.
Well, as I mentioned before when we started on, they seem to be decriminalizing all your drug laws. And I think that until that can be addressed, I mean, the way it currently stands, unless you have an extensive criminal history or an extreme flight risk and you get charged with a drug offense, you're not going to jail. And it's kind of a trickle-down effect because, we used to have a list of confidential informants that would work, well with law enforcement and provide a lot of good, valuable information. And it seems like since bail reform and things like that list has dwindled down to just a few people. Nobody, the mindset of these people now is, I don't need to work this off. I'm not going to jail anyway. So maybe lean on some lawmakers to table some bills or stiffen these laws up a little bit. The drug task force, they do a great job. They work hard, and to say anything less would be discrediting to them. Another thought I was having is maybe have somebody over there on these overdose deaths that could possibly work it back, and maybe to the person that sold this person the drugs. I know the state level, there's no charge, but if it's a heavy enough weight and you can work it to the point where this person could be charged for selling these drugs that are causing these deaths, maybe bump it up to the federal level. But it's a continuing problem, and until there's consequences that are harsh enough, it's going to be a continuing problem. But the best law enforcement can do is just keep doing what they're doing and going out there and trying to get these drugs off the
an opportunity just because I'd like to just say something more about drugs, or is that not?
No, it's fine.
So, there are a couple things. He makes a good point. Need to get, the detectives out there and working these drug cases back. Well, we're proud to say that we have a program called OD mapping. And OD mapping is when a rescue squad member or a police officer or somebody experiences or has somebody in front of them experience an overdose, death, or even if there's unconscious, they can put it into this app. And we are currently tracking it. This just goes back to one important thing, communication. And yes, I have spoken with our drug task force, and they have been instructed, if it's possible and it's feasible, to respond to the scene immediately and try to track down that person that's in fentanyl overdose. Timing is everything, especially when it comes to investigations, because evidence can disappear very quick. And I think it's really important that we continue to communicate and work on that epidemic. As far as leaning on the lawmakers, I can't speak highly enough about our current lawmakers here. Senator Steck, Assemblyman Gray, Senator Walsick, they're down there fighting every day. If we, I fully support all of their ventures. I know they're down there fighting. I speak to them often. Leaning on them is great, but we need to continue to take care of what's here, what we can control. And they're fully aware of our frustrations. Every sheriff and undersheriff in the state is also frustrated with the governor's office from time to time. We've asked for meetings with her, and it hasn't happened. We can all keep our fingers crossed up in this upcoming budget season and hoping that some kind of bail reform or something changes. Thank you.
So this question is going to be related to, you say it's difficult, and I agree with a lot of the bail reform and what's going on, and there's lawmakers on different sides of the aisle on that currently, right? And that's part of the problem that's going on.
Yes.
So I guess the next question I'd like to ask you is, are there any methods you would consider to allow the availability of more behavioral health solutions within the sheriff's office? If so, to what level and how would they be utilized?
Okay, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Are there any methods you would consider to allow the availability of more behavioral health solutions within the sheriff's office? If so, to what level and how would they be utilized?
So, there's two parts to this. The first part is behavioral health, is mental health, is part of it, and we have a mental health problem in this county. Not only do we have a drug epidemic, our mental health problem is probably a lot of what's stemming a lot of the issues that we're having. Our violent crime is up. The DA has more homicides on his docket than it's unprecedented in this county, and a lot of it has to do with mental health. With that being said, two things have happened under this current administration. One, we started a crisis intervention team. I sent deputies and or detectives to a crisis intervention team training. Now, some of the deputies and detectives are seasoned. They may not pick up on all the skills that, it's sort of like teaching a new guy or a guy that's been around or a girl that's been around a while, new trends and new ways. I get it. Sometimes there's frustration with that different mindset. Totally get it. The other part of it is we've started a MAP program. I personally wrote the MAP program. It was one of the first ones up here in the North Country with Saranac Lake. What the MAP program is there's iPads. Every deputy's issued an iPad that's on patrol in their 4 zones. They have the ability to go to someone's house rather than taking the person to Claxton Hepburn Medical Center, which is our closest mental health facility. They have the opportunity to talk to a licensed clinician right on their iPad. It saves mileage, it saves time, it saves use of force, it saves a person that's in mental crisis and putting them in the back of a car and bringing them to the hospital. Sometimes they're out of it, right? They don't even know. And this gives them an opportunity. So I believe those steps are great steps forward in the behavioral health of what we're doing here at the Sheriff's Office. The second part of this whole thing is behavioral health is drugs. And we have the MAP program in the St. Lawrence County Correctional Facility. I'm proud to say that we're probably one of the flagship correctional facilities in this state. If you do a tally of any of the sheriff's offices in the state, our population on the MAP program is extremely high. Well, we're in a high poverty-stricken, high drug use, poverty-stricken area, right? It's costing us money, but there is a ray of hope. Some of our use of forces, our grievances, our jail problems have actually gone down. So as much as we think that people in jail don't deserve drugs and medical assisted treatment, I don't make the laws. Albany does. We just have to follow them. And when you can follow them to the fullest extent and the most efficiently, that's what the taxpayers deserve.
Rick?
I'm not gonna disagree with most of what Sean said. We do have a mental health problem up here. Law enforcement, we're not mental health experts. The only thing that I could see on the law enforcement side of the house when it comes to mental health is maybe better train law enforcement in the response to mental health. The tablets, the map, that's a great idea. I firsthand saw it work one time. I was a little skeptical on it at first. Didn't know if it was gonna work, but it was great. It really was. The traditional way of doing it was you had to go out, you had to, have a face-to-face conversation with the person. If they weren't a threat to themselves or someone else, and they didn't wanna go with you willingly, then you couldn't take them unless a pickup order was issued. Pickup orders aren't the easiest thing to get issued, but the tablet, they consulted with the guy for probably 20-30 minutes. I wasn't there, I didn't see exactly what was said, but the guy willingly got in the car and went and got help. But, maybe, some training by mental health professionals and law enforcement to teach them how to better respond. It's probably a thing that we could do. And then again, the MAP program in the facility, when I heard about it, I was on the fence, and then I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, and I handle a lot of the crimes that are committed in the facility, and we had a lot of contraband charges and a lot of assault charges and things like that. And I sat back and thought about it, and I said, one of the biggest reasons that you get these uprisings in the facility is because people are anxious. They're going through withdrawals, they just wanna get their drugs, they're, upset, their mood swings. And I had talked to a few people in the facility since this program has been enacted, and they said it has calmed down. The inmates aren't as anxious as they used to be. They're a little more laid back, not saying that, it solved all the problems, but it did take care of some of them. We don't see the contraband in there as much anymore. They're not trying to smuggle that in. They know they're gonna get their fix. They're not gonna be dope sick. So, yeah, Sean covered it well.
Complex problem, sure.
Exactly.
All right, I'm gonna switch up now, and Rick, you're gonna go first. What do you think about staffing levels within our county jails? Where should they be
Staffing levels as far as inmates, or
for your corrections? Well, or inmates. Are there too many inmates? Do you need more guards?
well, from what I'm hearing from most of the corrections officers, that more manpower would be helpful. A lot of them feel they're overworked. Seems to be a lot of forced overtime over there. And you working in that environment, I can see how that would lower the morale. So increasing employee staff, nursing staff. As far as the inmate population, that fluctuates, but what I've noticed since bail reform and things like that the clientele that you have in the facility is, it's not your guy that failed to pay child support and he's doing 15 days. These people in there now, they deserve to be there. They're, most of them are waiting a prison sentence or already have been sentenced to a year or two in county facility. So I don't think you're gonna have much control over the inmate population, but the amount of correction officers you have staffing it, I think could be increased. I don't wanna say it this way, but you can't really depend on part-timers. They have their life too, I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, sir. What do you think about staffing levels within our county jails? Where should they be if you're not happy with what
Alright, so, the corrections officers, without question, last summer, they were forced day in, day out. No question about it. I'd go in there on a 3 to 11 shift at briefing, it's 85 degrees out, and they know they're getting stuck. I'm sure some of you here in this room, as union members, have been stuck. That stinks, especially in the middle of summer when you're missing your kids' barbecue, you're missing, a family get-together, you're stuck. That's not fair, and that's not right. But I will say this. Both myself, Sheriff Big Wharf, and the county legislators have done an extremely great job of ending that force issue. Right now, we have 0 openings in county corrections officers. 0 openings in deputy sheriff. Actions speak louder than words. You can go around the state right now and query every sheriff's office in the state, and there are 0 openings. Why is that? Well, I think we have a tremendous workforce that's inside the facility. We did raise the amount of corrections officers in that facility. We went from 56 to 60. We've added a MAT officer. We've also expanded the part-time pool of candidates. And yes, people that are part-time, they do have other jobs. However, those that are part-time right now are fulfilling their obligation. We are getting some time out of them. We're also getting back some retirees that have the ability to make some extra money after they retire, and they can still be of service to our community, and not having to pay to go get them trained. That has worked. So our staff has 0 openings, and we have 60 full-time corrections officers in there. We were at 56, and we have a part-time staff of 10. That does not include the jail administrator and the assistant jail administrator.
Thank you. Well, this response, you already partially answered, but this is more of the road patrol instead of the corrections. Detective Engel, back to you. Are there enough officers to be able to respond to the duties of the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office? If not, how do we fix it?
I currently feel there are enough officers to respond. It's a big county. We have broken up into 4 zones. A deputy per zone. The 12-hour shifts make things better than what it was when you were on 8-hour shifts, because the staffing, you see, staffing on 8-hour shifts, you had 2 deputies and a sergeant working. When we went to 12s, it seemed to have 2 platoons, one day shift, 1 night shift, which put 4 deputies and a sergeant on the road. I think is adequate coverage. We also, there's currently 1 part-timer there. Transports is what kills us during the day. They are what they are. They gotta get done. I just don't, when you start adding deputies to the road patrol and you start adding positions, you're putting a burden on the taxpayers. I pay taxes as well as everybody in here. I feel that right now the staffing level at the sheriff's office is comfortable. If we add on SROs, obviously it's gonna have to increase. But, that's a program in its own right there. And if they were full-time deputies in the SRO program, what do we do with them over extended breaks in the summertime? We can utilize them on the road, but that's a lot of manpower, So, staffing, I feel staffing at on the road is adequate. I would like to see an extra detective in the drug task force to assist over there. What was the other part of the question?
Well, that was it, just what you thought, if there was enough officers to respond to the duties of the office. Not how to fix it. Sure.
Okay, so as far as that's concerned, Detective Engel's correct. The 12-hour shifts are great. The person that facilitated the 12-hour agreement, I was the one as a union president. 12-hour shifts are spectacular. They're efficient. They get every other weekend off. It ups the morale. I wouldn't want to do anything different. Matter of fact, honestly, if they were willing, I would like to see the corrections staff do the same so they could get every other weekend off. But that's nor here nor there, and we're not going to argue that today. Is the road patrol fully staffed? There's 0 openings currently. We have 3 in the academy. There's always a revolving door. We've hired a lot of people. We are now at 42 with the sheriff and I, sworn police officers. That's the biggest the sheriff's office has ever been. And like I said, 5 of the 6 positions are funded outside resources. I think that's pretty remarkable. That doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. As far as expanding the SRD program, here's a couple thoughts. One, if the schools, if there's a big need for a lot of the schools, and we're unable to do that, to give every school an SRD, I would split up the deputies and put them in the schools at a random time to ensure, so the person that wants to do any harm or could do any harm with them would be a part of, be there on scene and have them in close proximity to the schools. I think this would, I think 5 to 6 total could do it, but I can say that the schools that we have currently on this program are, appear to be very satisfied, and they're looking to extend contracts, which is a big win for all of us. The drug task force, yeah, I don't know. I think our drug task force is pretty active. I'd like to see money spent somewhere else. They're busy. They're going to continue to be busy, but I don't think, I'm looking more from the locals and the state police, which we have a great working relationship with, and the federal agencies that we have. I'm quite confident that they have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. I would like to put a deputy on the road and assign him to the drug task force permanently. A proactive deputy in the marked unit that can go out into a neighborhood, and that's all they do. They're not doing transports, they're not doing anything else. They're going after the drug dealers. We need some police presence like that. Thank you.
Detective Engel, what is your stance on gun ownership? How will you protect the citizens while protecting the right to bear arms?
Well, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment, without any doubt. If you look at my background, you look at my history, I've always been a gun owner, always will be a gun owner. I stand behind the Second Amendment and the whole Constitution. As far as protecting the rights of the citizens of St. Lawrence County, I'll do whatever I have to do. The pistol permit program, I feel that we do a big part of it now. We might as well just finish it and do all the background investigation. That's a lot of man hours. The way they're doing some of the stuff right now with the ammo, I feel it's unconstitutional. And having to give your name, address, occupation, and stuff like that when you go buy a box of ammo, I don't see why we need to keep that record in this county. I stand behind it 110%. And, I think that, we need to look into ways of preserving that, and there again, I'm a believer in teamwork, and I think if you get the right group of people around the table, mull the problem over, you come up with a solution to it. How to address the Second Amendment issue, the red flag law and stuff like that. I don't think every person out here should own a gun. As we discussed earlier, mental health. So there should be a screening process, the background and stuff like that. But at what point do we not start infringing upon somebody's Second Amendment right? And I think that the way they want to do some of this stuff, delay the background investigations, with on 4473 forms and stuff like that, making you wait a longer period of time before you can make a purchase, raising the age on the age that you can purchase a firearm legally. It's just, there's a lot of moving parts to that. And as I said before though, I'll do whatever I have to do to stand behind the people of St. Lawrence County when it comes to the right to bear arms. If that means making it a 2A sanctuary, definitely something that's not off the table.
Sure.
Can you repeat the question again?
I sure can. What is your stance on gun ownership? How will you protect the citizens while protecting the right to bear arms?
So, I agree with everything that Detective Engel said with a couple exceptions. One, I'm gonna stand in front of the people of this county and say, over my dead body is the federal government or somebody gonna come in and take the guns out of the legal, law-abiding citizens of this county. It will not happen, period. I'm a passionate person, it will not happen. Absolutely. Hope everybody's recording it. Will not happen. Legal, law-abiding citizens need to have their right to bear arms, period. Second thing, I'm not gonna sit around and get a bunch of people around a table and talk about it. The people in this room and the people of this county are electing a sheriff to lead, not a table of people to lead. This is a one-man job. Somebody's gotta make decisions at the end of the day, and it's gotta happen. Because your rights depend on it. Period. That's it.
Would you push for any change to or additional officer training? If so, in what areas and how frequent? You touched earlier on, the opiate and stuff like that, officer training, I guess, kind of along those lines.
So pushing for additional training, obviously, in active shooter responses and things like that, that's a must. You always wanna up-train in those areas. Maybe instead of in-service training once a year, maybe try to do it 2 or 3 times. Mental health, that's another thing. We could, obviously, law enforcement could always use more training in mental health. And, how to deal with, mental health calls and, fire investigation, that's another area. I feel that, we should probably increase some training. I would say at least 4 deputies. That would help out a lot of the local volunteer fire departments as well. I've been around talking to some of them, and we don't have a big pool of county fire investigators. And you also gotta take into consideration, a lot of these volunteer departments, this training, they gotta pay for it, they gotta take time off of work, and I feel if the county could provide the deputies to investigate these fires, it would help them out. And, the other part of the question?
Just, would you push for any change to or additional officer training, and just in what areas if so?
Yeah, you wanna push for additional training for all your officers, but, those are some of the bigger areas that I feel should, be addressed.
And honestly, the next question, if you just wanna tie it together, is what level of training do you demand for officers in preparation to respond to any school or terrorism related incident? Where do you think the training level is now?
Right now, I think we're okay. There's always room for improvement with that. I'm a firearms instructor, a reality-based training instructor, and an active shooter instructor. There's always new ways, out there, and because of COVID, some of your training, it has been at a standstill, in-person training. It's coming back around. The tactical conferences and things like that offer a lot of good training when it comes to active shooter responses and how to deal with them. It's always good to try to get some people there and bring that training back to the department and pass it on, and include that training in your in-service training when it comes to active shooter responses and situations like that.
Thank you.
Repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Well, there's 2 of them, we'll just time together. Do you push for any change to or additional officer training? If so, what areas and how frequent? And then, to tie it together, what is the level of training you would demand for officers in preparation to respond to, school shootings, terrorism related incidents? Do you think the training level is where it should be now? Do you think we could do more?
Well, so our contracts, your union members, we have to follow contracts. As the administrator, I have to follow the contract, I respect the contract, and always will. With that being said, the deputies, as far as that goes, have up to 6 days of training built into their schedule. That works out great, that gets them a little extra money in their pocket. We plan it way in advance. Matter of fact, the memo came out in January for the entire year, and we always do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's not interfering on the weekends or anything like that because you guys want to, our members want to spend time with their families. I disagree with Detective Engel having 4 or 5 fire investigators added to the team. I think 1 or 2. Detective Sergeant McCarter does a great job doing the fire investigations, and I think a couple of deputies would grow them, cultivate them, and help the fire departments out, absolutely. But there's one thing that we do need to increase on, and that's electronic crimes. I don't have a cell phone right now on me, or I'd be holding it up, because their future, all of our children go home, and what do? And even we probably catch ourselves doing it. What are we on? We're on our phones, right? We have to do better. We have to do better because our families depend on it. I know from personal experience of not having, our people do great jobs. We lean on the federal government and the state police for federal phone extractions and electronic crimes. But we could do our own, and we need to get that going. We really need to get that program moving forward. As far as the training for active shooters and that, if it's, my opponent says it's okay, well, he's the senior firearms instructor. So I don't like to hear that he says it's okay. Now this man to my left is a trained sniper, a range instructor. I'm not a range instructor and I'm not a sniper, and I never will proclaim to be one. But he's saying the training is okay. Well, I guess I'm going to lean on him to say you need to increase the training for these active shooters and to really get involved, because he's the most senior firearms instructor that we have. I trust him. If we had a hostage incident and my family member was in harm's way and Rick Engel was on the end of the scope, that's the guy I want, without question. But if we need to up our training for firearms, then we're going to address it.
Thank you. Okay, so just a few more. Under Sheriff O'Brien, I'll switch back to you now.
Okay.
What is your experience coordinating law enforcement activities?
Well, as far as the police response or union activities, or I can tell you this, I'll do both. So I'm a 3-time union president. I have started the 6 Point Star Invitational Golf Tournament as union president. I've been an executive board member of the State Sheriff's Deputy Sheriff's Association. I've negotiated contracts. I've negotiated contracts with 0% raises for more than 1 year and get reelected after that. You don't do that by accident. You don't do that by accident. You do that by being passionate and working hard for the people that you represent. I switched gears in 2020. Trust me, I've learned a lot. I've got a lot more gray hair. I probably put on a few pounds, but you switch the side of the table. I'm still the same man as I was when I was union president. My values haven't changed. My expectations haven't changed. Nothing's changed, but my roles have changed. And what do I coordinate? I have 130 employees of the sheriff's office that do great work every day. Outstanding work. Our use of force incidents are down. We're coming in under budget. Any activities that may call for emergency response, I'm not necessarily the one that makes the call every time, but we have great road sergeants and Detective Sergeant McCarter that makes the decisions. He runs them by me. I trust my people. You have to trust your people. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of coordination, and we've had a lot of issues, and I think nobody's been injured and nobody's been killed. Knock on wood. Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Engel, your experience of coordinating law enforcement activities?
Well, it's not nearly as extensive as Sean's. I haven't had an opportunity to be in some of those positions. I have been the union vice president several times. I've also been involved in negotiating contracts. Coordinating training, that's just not a position I've been in. As a detective or a deputy, that was never my responsibility. So my experience there is limited, but it's something that I'm willing to learn.
Okay, we're gonna go back and forth there. Detective Engel, do you consider yourself to have good morals and integrity, and if so, why?
Absolutely. Why? It's just the way I live my life. It's just who I am.
Simple enough. Thank you.
Don't know how else to explain it.
Good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. recently, I released every file that I had. I actually went over and above what a FOIL request would offer. I actually gave a counseling when I was late to work in 2007. You know, that wasn't required, part of a FOIL request. I gave it anyway. I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. I have integrity, absolutely.
I want to add on that, if you don't mind, John. So, let's just look at this and understand one thing. You spend 20 years in law enforcement, you're going to make a mistake. If you do the job, you're going to make a mistake. We all make mistakes. Now, I've been foiled twice. I've got nothing to hide. You want to criticize me for abusing time, I'm maxed on everything. And I always have been maxed on time. Now, some of the disciplinary things that I faced that were excluded from my FOIL because they were never properly dealt with, I'll tell you what it was. One time I was going a little too fast to an emergency call, a motorcycle accident. Now at that point in my career I've dealt with several motorcycle accidents and they always ended in a fatality or serious physical injury. Knowing I had some ground to make up, I was going a little too fast. I was counseled for that. That's what it was. And the other incident, what it was I work a lot of overtime. I wish they'd include that in the FOIL. Hundreds and hundreds of hours a year. And we had a training day. This is back when, I think when we first went to 12-hour shifts. And I had worked some overtime that week. I helped my in-laws on the farm. The hay vine was broke. I'm the mechanic. It's the only day I had off. And I decided that I wasn't going to go to training. I just didn't show up. I called the night before and said I wasn't going to be there. I got counseled on that. That's all I got.
Well, we appreciate your transparency and your candor, sir.
Absolutely.
In your words, Sheriff O'Brien, in your words, what does the sheriff do?
Sheriff leads the people, protects the people of this county, leads the employees through the highs and lows. And the sheriff needs to protect all the people and the citizens of this county. As I said before, I'll remind Ed Body, as far as the Second Amendment goes. And we need to ensure that there's a proper funded budget from the county legislature. We need to make sure that we come in under budget, we do it efficiently, the best job that we can, and make sure that nobody gets hurt, nobody gets injured within the sheriff's office. They all deserve to go home to their families. They work hard. They put on that uniform every day. They need to be able to go home and enjoy it.
Thank you. Dr. Vangle, in your words, what does the sheriff do?
I think Sean said it best. He leads the people. You know, he's there to protect and serve. Officer safety is one of the biggest things, and that's his responsibility to make sure nobody gets hurt. On the road and in the correctional facility and even the civil department. We got civil deputies out there going serving papers and processes and doing evictions and stuff like that. You know, that can get hairy at times when you're kicking people out of their house. But I think Sean said it well. I gotta agree with him on that one.
Very good. Back to you, Detective. What are your goals for the sheriff's department? And let me maybe help capture that for you. You both seem to be happy. The corrections officers at the jail seem to be more adequate maybe than what they were in years past. It sounds like your deputies, your road patrol is adequate levels. You'd like to see a little bit more, maybe your drug task force or on your fire cell. So with those levels being adequate, which are big things in the sheriff's office, what are your goals with the department moving forward if you are elected sheriff?
Probably, honestly, continue on the path that we're on. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think the morale could come up a little bit. It's hard because I'm sitting right next to my supervisor.
Go ahead. You announced for your candidacy for sheriff. Let it go.
Understood, so let's.
I'm good. I mean, respectful. Go ahead. No problems.
Morale definitely needs increasing, and everybody I talk to, it's a style of leadership. And, I'll just leave it there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Under Sheriff O'Brien,
So,
goals for the Sheriff's Department.
to the style of leadership, I'll leave people with this. I'm not the sheriff. I'm not the incumbent. I'm the undersheriff. I'm a 3-time union president that was hired as the undersheriff of this county. I'm loyal, I'm respectful, and I'll do what the boss says. And I think everybody in this room would agree with me. His style of leadership is not the exact same style of leadership that I have. When I do things differently sometimes, absolutely. But that's his business. He was elected to this county. I represent him. I have to do what he says. What do we need to do moving forward with the sheriff's office? The emergency response team is a must. Electronic crimes and electronic phones is a must. We need to continue to try to make the pistol permit process as efficient as we can. We need to support our other law enforcement partners, and we need to continue, and I like his answer, we're headed down the right path. You're right, we are headed down the right path, and I've been the number 2 leading down that path. So yes, we are gonna continue down that path if I'm elected sheriff, and we're gonna continue to communicate, be efficient, and work for the citizens of this county every day.
Thank you. If you just give me a second, I just wanna, Travis, the question, you guys wrote a couple things down.
Right.
About Kathy Hochul and the governor and her, did they cover?
Well, the one question he had that, he personally has had this situation happen to him with his kid where he actually watched, his son actually watched another kid get choked out right at school, just faint right in front of him. It was devastating, Travis. Where are we at with the bullying, the pushing, and, I mean, kids are getting beat up in school. It's not just the guns and stuff, but I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on in these schools that aren't being addressed or being, you don't hear about every day. I'm sure there's people here that'll have similar stories that they're seeing. Is there any, if you just want to take a shot at it to see if there's something that you thought could be done in the school?
Well, the issue there with anybody under the age of 18 is when it comes to law enforcement, it's not that you can't deal with them, the process is different. You know, when I first started, 16 years of age was the cutoff. If you were 16 or older, you could be dealt with like an adult. I could talk to you. I didn't need to have a parent or legal guardian present. Honestly, in a nutshell, the bullying, in my personal opinion, comes from lack of parenting at home. Some of these kids, not every one of them, but, how to address that?
I guess he was coming
When it
back.
comes to kids, you can deal with the kids, you can still charge the kids, it's just a slightly different process, you know, you gotta go through family court and everything.
I guess his question about it was those more about the resource officers being more available,
Yeah.
being in the schools
Absolutely.
to be there, you know?
I think overwhelmingly, collectively, I think the society, but probably the country feels is that we want more SROs and
But
Yeah.
the funding obviously
I mean,
can't come directly out of the sheriff's office for everything.
on the SRO program, you gotta understand too, the whole purpose of that SRO, is that school resource deputy in that facility is security. It's not that he shouldn't have a good rapport with the staff and the students. It's just his primary function is school safety, right? Like going around checking windows and doors, janitor's closets, making sure that, you know, nobody's in the school that shouldn't be in the school, things are where they're supposed to be. His head should be on a swivel. Is it okay to get involved in a basketball game at lunchtime, or maybe stop in and read a book to the kindergarten class? I personally don't see a problem with that, but that's not his primary function as an SRO.
And probably just more presence in the schools and just cut down on some of those, right?
Yeah.
Well, the SRO is not a fix-all for anything. More so, I would say it's a deterrent. Understanding an active shooter, they're looking for a soft target. Traditionally, schools are soft target because they're gun-free zones, correct? So that's kind of what they're looking for. But when you start putting armed law enforcement in the school, they're not necessarily a soft target anymore. Now they know they're gonna encounter some resistance. They're not gonna have that time to you know, do that mass destruction when they're, and, you know, wreak that havoc. Their time's limited. They're not gonna have 10, 15, 20 minutes. They're only gonna have seconds or a minute with the SRO being there. The SRO is also direct liaison to outside law enforcement. The SRO should have access to the camera systems and things like that. So he's gonna be the one orchestrating that in the event of an active shooter. But as far as using that SRO to lessen the bullying in the school and stuff, it's not saying that he couldn't get somewhat involved with it, but is that what you want him tied up doing?
I mean, when I was in school, the teachers were always outside the classroom as the students were. I don't know, I think the teachers should be more proactive as well. You know what I'm saying? They were always outside.
You know, being a parent myself,
I know it.
and having some relatives that are school teachers and stuff, that's a tough job nowadays. You
Yeah.
know, it's not like when I was in school. You know, you messed up. You know, and you got sent out in the hall, and they took a wooden paddle across your ass
Yeah.
and taught you a lesson. You know, and you didn't want that to get back to your parents at home, because that's going to happen again. It's not like that nowadays. You know, being a teacher is pretty tough. You know,
Yeah.
if the parent wants to send their kid to school and they want the teacher to be the parent at school, but then when the teacher does become the parent at school, the kid goes home, the parents are offended, and all of a sudden they want some kind of disciplinary action against the teacher. So it's a tough spot.
Sheriff O'Brien.
I'll respond. I actually disagree slightly. I think that the SRDs should be involved in the children that are working at school or at school. I think that relationship that they have, they may be able to mentor those children in the right direction so they're not bullying. So yes, they're there to protect the children and the teachers and everything else, because our teachers do a great job. But that SRD is not just there just to be a doorman. That person needs to engage with those children. That's our hope, is that they continue to make those great relationships. So when they do turn 16 and do turn 18, they look at us with respect and dignity, and not just saying he was the doorman when I was at school. So I think we need to make sure that they engage. So I disagree with my opponent on that one for sure. There was another comment about the school. He's right. The part that he is correct on is it is different. It's a different situation with a juvenile. It is done through family court. This is the other problem. Everyone in this room is a legal, law-abiding citizen. You know why? Probably because our parents said there are consequences if you do something. And sometimes we shrug our shoulders and look the other way sometimes and wonder, where are the consequences now? Well, I can't change the schools. The superintendents, the principals, they have the oversight of those school districts. So I can't speak for what happened in this particular incident, of somebody getting choked or not, but we leave it to the schools. I do say that the deputies, they answer to the sheriff, which they should, because they're sworn to take an oath by the sheriff or the undersheriff. But at the end of the day, they do have a good working relationship with those school administrators, and they need to continue to do that and make sure they foster those relationships with those children to try to put a stop to that bullying. That's why we want those people in there, not as a doorman.
I don't disagree with fostering relationships. I just how much time you want to spend on doing it.
All right. If you have a shots fired incident, they need to respond immediately as they've been trained. They're in the school.
Well, good answers, gentlemen. It's, you're stretched then, you know.
Yeah,
There's, the world's really, especially in the schools and stuff, and everyone over there, certainly a lot of changes. From administrators, teachers, and to you guys dealing with it, there's no doubt. Rob, did you, as far as the gun laws though,
Well, actually, I do have one. I have one because you put it out there. You're over your dead body, as you said, the Second Amendment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the 16-hour class, 2 hours live shooting for $300. I don't know if you look at it this way. This is how I look at it. That's a deterrent for me going out to get a pistol permit. I didn't have to pay that when I got mine.
I didn't either.
Derek Joseph, concealed permit. I mean, this is, I feel, by adding all these laws the ammunition, the this, that's just another deterrent. Even though you say over your dead body that they're not taking them away, but they're making it so difficult and so unaffordable for the guy that may not be able to afford to do it, not to be able to do it.
Couldn't disagree with you more, or couldn't agree with you more, excuse me.
Right.
As a sheriff, you are the executive office, right? You enforce the laws.
Right.
You don't create them. So we gotta keep that in mind. You only can control what you can control. And in St. Lawrence County, I can't control what the DEA does, or excuse me, the ATF does in relation to the requirement of leaving your address and name to buy ammunition. I personally don't agree with it. I personally don't agree that you have to spend that kind of money to take that class. I think, you know how frustrated we are? That class can't even be taught by law enforcement officers. They put that law in there, and DCGS, who's the governing body that gives me my police officer certificate, Detective Engel his police officer certificate, they won't even allow us. That man's a range instructor. He should be able to go out and teach the class without question. And we did do that in the sheriff's office. If everybody goes back and does it, we said, this is an important thing, but it shouldn't cost you $300. This should be a good working relationship with the citizens that we serve. You know, people like in this room that want to meet their local sheriff and their deputy sheriffs, absolutely. As sheriff, I'm hoping they change that law.
So
Because
what-
I will facilitate the most robust training program for pistol permits. Because I think not everybody should just walk out of the door with a weapon with no training, right? Some people need training, some, not all, some. And as we move forward, I think in order to be safe and proactive, I think we should do this. I think the sheriff's office, once granted authority to do it, we should go back to where we were in 2020 and do this training program, and not for $300. I agree with you 100%.
So, that's gonna be it for questions that we've arranged, so I'm gonna leave it to the floor now. Again, I ask that if you have a question, please stand up, state your name, and I want it to be directly related to the sheriff's race for the county. The floor is yours, folks.
I got one. Hi, Jason Chilton. The sheriff's department doesn't have a real, when it comes to a picket line, we have some history with that. And Sheriff Jarvis actually brought people, escorted scabs across a picket line. How would you guys, as sheriff, handle a picket line?
Well, I'm the kind of guy where I don't have an opinion on everything. Because if it doesn't affect me personally, professionally, why would I have an opinion? But as far as the picket line and law enforcement, we're there for safety. Make sure people can get where they need to go freely and safely. If that requires escorting certain people to certain places so they can get their job done, I feel that's what we'd have to do.
I don't dispute with what he's saying. I honestly would need to research something along those lines. I do recall something, I was brand new at the time when that was going on. It's not something we deal with often. We don't want to have to deal with that as much as you don't want to have to deal with it. I respect labor. I was a 3-time union president. So I have that history of respecting unions, but he's right. We also have to protect the people of this county and maintain order, and that's exactly what we will do.
Thank you. More comments, questions, folks? Okay, well, thank you so much, gentlemen. These guys both have 20-plus years of experience. I think you have a wonderful sheriff either way. I thank you for coming down here and answering the questions and being put in the spotlight.
I appreciate
like
the
this.
opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm gonna give everybody one more opportunity to support labor. We're heading to MMA, Messina Memorial Hospital. The nurses, they're not getting proper pay, they're not getting proper staffing levels. This room's headed there to support them. If you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Okay.